All right, so what kind of questions do you have now that you've watched a little bit, thought a little more about this? What comes to mind? Any other questions in light of what we've just seen?
I don't know. Does anybody else have trouble being a Christian other than me? I mean, I find that there's so many things. Like, I get mad real quick. I mean, like I'm driving down the street and I'm, get out of the way, or somebody cuts me off. And I have a bad habit, which I'm trying very hard to break. And I'm sure with God's help, hopefully I'll make it. But I have a few cuss words that I use, kind of the small ones, And before I know it, they plop right out of my mouth. And then it's, what am I going to, it's already been said. All I can do is what? Say I'm sorry?
You're asking a decent question here, Linda, and I don't think you're alone in that. And it kind of gets at some of what was said in the teaching, is that if it is about your performance and trying to be as good as Jesus, man, we all struggle.
Oh, yeah.
And we're all trying to do that, but man, we fall short all the time, which is precisely why Jesus Christ is such an important and singular individual in our faith, because he's not just there to say, come on, and cheer us on and try to pull us a little higher, but he's there to give us grace for our failure. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Does it get easier?
The Christian walk is always going to be a challenge, Linda. You might have some victory over some things, and there will be new things, guaranteed. You'll never arrive. We're always all in process. That's part of the reality.
I just feel that because I'm fairly new at it, that I have so much to overcome. It's sometimes overwhelming.
Oh, don't be too concerned, Linda. Just keep on taking one step at a time. The thing that you need to focus on is the reality of what you said earlier, that Jesus Christ is Savior. And that's very different than saying Jesus Christ is example. And it's important to recognize, yeah, I need to be walking with Christ. That's got its place. But the key thing with Jesus is what he does as the one who covers our sin, the one who gives us forgiveness. That's critical. Other questions? What comes to mind? Other things? George?
Well, we're Christians, and I know a lot of Christians, and they all accept the fact that Jesus is the Lord and Jesus is the Son of God, and he came to earth to save us from our sin and to die for us so we wouldn't be lost. And we all accept that. And we do accept the life that he gives us, the new life that he gives us, and we accept the fact that he's the only way to God and to get to heaven. And the problem is that a lot of people that don't believe in God have a problem with that. They accept him as a great teacher.
Right.
They accept him as a great man. And some people, they even accept that he performed a lot of miracles.
Sure.
But when it comes to the end, they don't accept him as the only way or the Son of God.
Right.
How does God, or how does Jesus rise above all the other gods in the world? How does he set the standard that says, well, I'm the only one because of this?
And
everyone else cannot get you to God, or how is the only one?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think I'd say two things stand out really significantly. One is the Christianity is just so very different in the whole premise of what's going on. And that's the image of those stairs. Every other religion basically is just giving you a staircase to climb. And if you study the religion, and it just breaks down to basically, here's the list. And so most religions in the world operate with a list. And so you join that religion, they say, okay, here's your list. Do this, and you'll become proficient at this religion, or you'll become worthy of this religion, or you'll get close to God, whatever their goal is. Here's the list, do it. And the list just becomes the steps. Do the steps and repeat. With Christianity, there's no list. When you become a Christian, it's not, here's the list, do this, and you become a good Christian. No, not at all. It's what God has done for you. You simply receive. So Christianity is all about grace, and grace means receiving. Not earning, but simply receiving. That's the first big thing. Second big thing is the resurrection. Jesus Christ dies as a result of man's rejection of God's plan. God doesn't let that stand. He vindicates Christ, brings him back from the dead. All of his words are validated by the fact that God raises him and brings him back and establishes him as his Son, the living Son of God. That makes him rather unique. There's no other religion that makes that claim that its founder is alive now and it was resurrected in a bodily form. That's precisely the center of Christianity. So Christianity hinges on the validity of the resurrection. Very important. Yeah, it's a good question.
They're going to always argue that, though. I mean, they're going to say, well, there is no physical proof or evidence that they show the Jesus who resurrected, or that whatever teaches teachings that he's the only way.
Well, yeah, they can argue, and somebody who wants to argue always will. I mean, the one who wants to remain unconvinced will. This kind of goes back to what we talked about in the first session about people who don't want there to be a God. They just find a way to argue against everything. Now, on the other thing, when people say you can't prove the resurrection, well, I'll challenge that, because if you start taking a look at proof and evidence, there is a lot of proof for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And there's even good evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I don't have time to detail all this stuff, but there are resources available that get into a lot of that stuff. And there is actually a lot of evidence that says he absolutely rose. And that is the best account for what was going on there in those days and in that history. So there's good evidence for it, actually.
And I personally always believe that that's one of the reasons they call it faith. Because you don't always need proof for something, you just have faith, you believe in something. If you needed proof for everything, that would be called science. Because science like to prove everything that it's unexplainable. So I think to a certain point, you need to have faith to accept something, even though proof it's out there, you still have to accept it the way it is. Because it's faith. I mean, it's faith. I mean,
right.
I don't know.
I am very sympathetic to that, George, and I'm with you on that. And there is a distinction between what we know by faith and what we kind of perceive with our senses. But the lines get more blurred the further you go, and a lot of science starts to smell a whole lot like faith when you get down into it. And I would argue that Christianity is not just based on a kind of a blind leap of faith, but is based on facts and on God's truth that he has revealed to us. And so, while I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, and there's truth to that, I don't want to push it too far.
Right.
Yeah. You guys, thoughts? I'm curious what you're thinking, Tabitha. If anything in the video was like a little different angle or a different emphasis, or you're just like, yeah, that's right on the money. What are your thoughts?
I don't know. When you said that Jesus was God, and I don't really know what I thought about that. It it didn't shock me, but.
Yeah.
I always thought of him as the Son of God, because he always prayed to God when he was in trouble or being tempted or something.
Yeah.
He was always praying to God, and if he was God, then he'd be praying to himself. And I don't know.
That's a great comment. A very good comment, and because you're getting at one of the most difficult nuances of Christian doctrine, that Jesus and God the Father are two different, distinct persons. So Jesus can pray to the Father, and the Father can send him, and so they're distinct, and yet Jesus himself, in more than one time, said, I and the Father are one. He said that. And he talks about the Father's will is his will, and there's this unity that exists. And so Jesus really is full-blown God, and the Father is God. There's only one God, so Jesus is God, and yet they're distinct. Now, in Christian doctrine, we really develop this more based on what the Bible teaches us and what the church has given us, what Christ gave us. And this turns into the doctrine of the Trinity, the idea that there's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, three distinct persons, but there's only one God. And that always that's a huge mystery. And it thrills you. It really does.
Yeah, well, in Christian Science, I was always taught that Jesus and all the rest of us are reflections of God. Mm-hmm. Therefore, we are all of the qualities of him, and we can express love and truth and all the synonyms and things, but I didn't think that that made us or Jesus actual God.
No, that's good. And I want to pursue this a little bit. This is interesting because in one sense, Jesus is a peer with us. He is fully human, like us. But in another sense, he's not like us. He's God. He's God in the flesh. And so the reason that he makes a claim to be God is not because he somehow achieved that level. He was that way from the very beginning. John chapter 1 says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And it's referring to Christ. And it says, and the Word became flesh. So in other words, Jesus was fully God right from the very beginning. It's not something he accomplished and now kind of rose up to that level. So you and I are just different. We're people. We're human beings. He's God. And our lives then are meant to be reflecting his perfection and doing what he put us here to do, but we never do become gods. We're not gods.
Right.
We're just
Well,
people.
yeah, I know there's only one God, and
Yeah.
we can't all become God, but we are his reflections, and
No, I'm with you. We reflect God to the rest of the creation. That's true. We were created in the image of God. That's true. But the idea of reflecting God is even not what makes us right or makes us right with God. And that's why Jesus is such an important center of our teaching, is because of what he does for us. The idea of that mediator. Yeah. All right. That's good. Good thoughts. All right. So I appreciate your thoughts, and we'll go a little further with some of these hard questions, the questions that kind of trouble us, when we get together next time.